When the headlines get louder than the facts, it's time to separate verified court records from internet rumors. In Lil Durk's ongoing legal battle, one of the biggest questions isn't just about the charges, it's about the people prosecutors believe can help build their case. Who are the alleged informants? Which witnesses are actually named in court filings? And how much of what fans are sharing online is backed by evidence versus pure speculation? In this deep dive, we're breaking down every publicly known informant, cooperating witness, confidential source, and key individual linked to Lil Durk's federal case. We'll examine what official court documents actually say, who has reportedly cooperated with investigators, and where the biggest unanswered questions still remain. We'll also separate social media theories from verified facts, because in a case this high profile, misinformation spreads almost as fast as breaking news. From alleged insider testimony to federal evidence, sealed filings, and courtroom developments, we'll analyze every major figure connected to the investigation and explain why each person matters. Whether they're eyewitnesses, cooperating defendants, law enforcement sources, or individuals repeatedly mentioned by fans online, we'll cover their role based on publicly available information, not rumors. If you want the complete picture of Lil Durk's legal battle and the witnesses who could shape its outcome, stay locked in until the end. Some of the names on this list may surprise you, while others have already become central to the prosecution's case. Let's dive into every known witness and alleged informant connected to one of hip-hop's biggest legal stories. Remember, all defendants are presumed innocent unless proven guilty in court. The federal legal case involving Lil Durk has become one of the most closely watched stories in hip-hop, and with every new court filing, fans have been asking the same question: who are the witnesses, and what role could they play in the government's case? Over the past several months, social media has been flooded with lists of supposed informants, leaked conversations, and countless theories claiming to reveal who is cooperating with investigators. However, there is a major difference between internet speculation and information that actually appears in official court records. That distinction matters because federal prosecutors rely on evidence that can be presented in court, not on viral posts or online rumors. As this case continues to develop, understanding who is officially connected to the investigation, and who is not, is essential for anyone trying to follow the story accurately. One of the biggest misconceptions surrounding high-profile federal cases is that every person mentioned online is automatically an informant. In reality, federal investigations often involve several different categories of individuals. Some people may simply be witnesses who observed events. Others may provide records or evidence without ever becoming cooperating witnesses. There can also be confidential sources whose identities remain protected by the court, while some individuals may testify only if the case eventually reaches trial. Each category serves a different purpose, and confusing them can create a completely inaccurate picture of what prosecutors are actually building. That is why experienced legal reporters focus on court filings instead of internet speculation whenever new information becomes available. Another important point to understand is that not every witness supports the prosecution in the same way. Some witnesses may only verify basic facts, such as travel records, phone activity, financial transactions, or surveillance footage. Others may have first-hand knowledge of specific events that investigators believe are relevant to the allegations. In many federal cases, prosecutors also present testimony from law enforcement officers who explain how evidence was collected and analyzed. None of these witnesses automatically prove guilt or innocence. Instead, each piece of testimony becomes one part of a much larger case that the court ultimately evaluates. That is why legal experts consistently remind the public that evidence should be considered as a whole rather than focusing on a single witness or a single document. As attention around Lil Durk's case has grown, online discussions have become increasingly difficult to separate from verified reporting. Numerous videos and social media posts have identified different rappers, associates, or acquaintances as alleged informants without presenting any supporting court documentation. In many instances, those claims spread rapidly because they generate clicks and engagement rather than because they are supported by evidence. This has created confusion among fans trying to understand what is actually happening inside the courtroom. Responsible reporting requires a much higher standard. Unless an individual's role is identified through official filings, sworn testimony, or verified reporting from credible news organizations, claims about their cooperation should be treated with caution rather than accepted as fact. Federal prosecutors generally build cases over long periods of time, collecting digital evidence, communications, surveillance, financial records, and witness testimony before filing charges. By the time an indictment becomes public, investigators often possess a significant amount of information that extends well beyond what is immediately released. At the same time, not every detail becomes available to the public. Some filings remain sealed, certain witnesses may be protected, and portions of the investigation can remain confidential until later stages of the legal process. Because of that, the public usually sees only part of the overall picture while the case is still moving through the federal court system. It is also important to remember that the legal process moves according to courtroom procedures rather than social media timelines. New filings, hearings, motions, and judicial rulings can change what information becomes public from one month to the next. Something that appears to be a major revelation online may turn out to have little legal significance, while a short court filing can sometimes reshape the direction of an entire case. That is one reason experienced court reporters spend more time reading official documents than reacting to trending hashtags. Those records provide the most reliable foundation for understanding how prosecutors and defense attorneys are preparing their arguments. Throughout this report, every individual discussed will be examined according to publicly available information rather than internet rumors. Where official court documents identify witnesses, those details will be explained carefully and in context. Where information remains unverified, it will be identified as such instead of being presented as established fact. With a federal case attracting nationwide attention, accuracy matters more than speed. As more hearings take place and additional records become public, the picture may continue to evolve. For now, the goal is simple: separate verified information from speculation and provide a clearer understanding of the people publicly linked to one of the biggest legal stories in hip-hop, while remembering that Lil Durk, like every defendant, is presumed innocent unless proven guilty in court. One of the most important things to understand about the federal case is that prosecutors have not publicly released a complete list of every witness they may call if the case eventually goes to trial. That is completely normal in federal criminal proceedings. Instead, the public learns about potential witnesses through court filings, detention hearings, motions, and other legal documents filed throughout the process. Because of that, many names circulating online simply have not been confirmed by the court. This has created an environment where speculation often spreads much faster than verified information, making it difficult for fans to know which reports deserve attention and which ones should be viewed with skepticism. When federal prosecutors begin building a major criminal case, they usually rely on several different forms of evidence at the same time. Witness testimony is only one piece of the overall investigation. Digital communications, phone records, surveillance footage, financial transactions, travel records, and forensic evidence can all become part of the government's presentation. If witnesses are called, their testimony is often used to explain or support evidence that investigators have already collected. In other words, prosecutors generally try to build a case that does not depend entirely on the credibility of a single individual. Instead, they attempt to show that multiple pieces of evidence point toward the same conclusion. Another area that has generated significant discussion is the possibility of cooperating witnesses. In federal cases, a cooperating witness is generally someone who agrees to provide information or testimony to investigators, sometimes as part of their own legal situation. However, simply because someone has been questioned by law enforcement does not automatically make that person a cooperating witness. Likewise, appearing in a court document or being interviewed by investigators should not be interpreted as proof that an individual is secretly working with prosecutors. These distinctions are extremely important because federal investigations often involve interviews with many people who never become government witnesses. The term confidential source has also been widely misunderstood in discussions surrounding the case. A confidential source is not necessarily someone from an artist's inner circle. In some investigations, confidential sources provide limited information without ever appearing in court. Their identities may remain protected for safety reasons or because revealing them could affect ongoing investigative work. In other situations, a confidential source may simply provide background information that helps investigators obtain additional evidence through lawful means. Whether such a source ultimately becomes a witness depends on how the case develops and what evidence prosecutors decide to present before a jury. Legal analysts have repeatedly pointed out that federal prosecutors usually avoid revealing more information than necessary before trial. This strategy helps preserve the integrity of the investigation while limiting opportunities for witnesses to influence one another's testimony. As a result, many of the names that eventually appear during trial proceedings are not publicly discussed months in advance. That is another reason why internet lists claiming to identify every informant should be viewed carefully. Unless supported by official filings or verified reporting, those lists often mix confirmed facts with unsupported speculation, making it difficult for the public to separate reality from rumor. Court filings that have become public so far indicate that investigators relied on a variety of evidence during their investigation, but those filings do not confirm every claim circulating on social media. Some online creators have presented theories as though they were already established facts, even when official documents do not support those conclusions. Responsible reporting requires acknowledging what is known, what remains uncertain, and what has not been confirmed by the court. That approach may not generate the same level of online excitement, but it provides viewers with a much more accurate understanding of the legal process. Another point worth remembering is that federal prosecutors are not required to prove every allegation through witness testimony alone. Physical evidence, digital records, expert analysis, and documentary evidence can sometimes carry just as much weight as live testimony in court. Witnesses help explain events, establish timelines, or provide context, but their testimony is usually considered alongside many other forms of evidence. Defense attorneys also have the opportunity to challenge witness credibility, question investigative methods, and dispute the government's interpretation of the evidence. That adversarial process is a fundamental part of the American legal system. As the case continues moving through federal court, more information may become available through future hearings and additional filings. Until then, the most reliable approach is to focus on verified court records instead of viral speculation. Every new document has the potential to clarify unanswered questions or introduce new developments, but it is equally important not to jump ahead of the legal process. For now, the public record provides only part of the overall picture, and any discussion about alleged informants or witnesses should remain grounded in evidence that has actually been presented through official legal channels. As always, Lil Durk remains presumed innocent unless proven guilty in court, and the final outcome will ultimately be determined inside the courtroom rather than on social media. One of the biggest questions surrounding Lil Durk's federal case is whether prosecutors already have testimony from individuals who personally know the people involved. That question has fueled endless debate across YouTube, X, Instagram, and other social media platforms, where new names seem to appear almost every week. However, based on the public court record, there is no verified list identifying every person who may eventually testify. Federal prosecutors rarely reveal their complete witness strategy during the early stages of a criminal case, and that approach is intentional. By limiting the amount of information released before trial, investigators reduce the risk of witness intimidation, preserve the integrity of testimony, and protect evidence that may still be under review. For viewers following every update, that means patience is often more valuable than speculation. Another reason rumors spread so quickly is because many people misunderstand how federal investigations actually work. Investigators often interview dozens, and sometimes even hundreds, of individuals before deciding whether those interviews will play any role in court. A person may answer questions from federal agents and never hear from them again. Someone else might provide documents or electronic records without ever becoming a courtroom witness. Others may simply verify routine facts that help investigators establish timelines. None of those situations automatically turns someone into an informant. Unfortunately, online discussions frequently ignore these distinctions, causing ordinary witnesses and alleged cooperators to be grouped together even though the legal system treats those categories very differently. Digital evidence has become another major focus in discussions surrounding the case. Modern federal investigations frequently rely on cell phone data, location information, text messages, emails, social media activity, photographs, and surveillance footage. These forms of evidence can sometimes establish timelines without requiring extensive witness testimony. Investigators may also compare information from multiple devices to determine whether separate pieces of evidence support one another. Because digital records often include timestamps and other technical details, prosecutors sometimes view them as highly valuable during trial. Even then, digital evidence usually requires witnesses such as forensic specialists or law enforcement officers to explain how the information was collected and authenticated before it can be presented to a jury. Another topic receiving attention is whether any defendants or associates have chosen to cooperate with federal authorities. While cooperation agreements certainly exist in some criminal cases, they are not automatically announced when someone speaks with investigators. In fact, many cooperation agreements remain confidential until they become relevant in court proceedings. That means internet claims identifying specific individuals as confirmed cooperators should be approached carefully unless supported by official filings or statements made during court hearings. In federal court, documentation matters far more than online speculation, and responsible reporting should always reflect that standard rather than repeating unverified allegations. Legal experts also point out that prosecutors often build overlapping layers of evidence. Instead of depending on one key witness, they typically attempt to reinforce their arguments using several independent sources. For example, witness testimony might be compared with phone records, surveillance footage, travel information, financial documents, or forensic analysis. If multiple forms of evidence support the same sequence of events, prosecutors generally believe their case becomes stronger. On the other hand, defense attorneys examine those same materials for inconsistencies, missing information, or alternative explanations that could create reasonable doubt. This back-and-forth process is exactly how the adversarial legal system is designed to function. As public interest continues to grow, content creators have produced countless videos claiming to reveal secret witnesses or hidden informants connected to the investigation. Many of those videos rely heavily on anonymous sources or unverified screenshots that cannot be independently confirmed. While those stories often attract millions of views, they should not be confused with evidence presented in federal court. Experienced legal journalists typically wait for official filings, courtroom testimony, or statements from attorneys before reporting major developments. That approach may seem slower, but it significantly reduces the chances of spreading inaccurate information that could later prove to be false. Another important factor is that witness lists can change as a case develops. Prosecutors sometimes decide not to call certain witnesses if other evidence adequately proves the same point. Likewise, defense attorneys may challenge whether specific testimony should even be admitted before a jury hears it. Judges also play a critical role by determining what evidence satisfies legal standards and what information must remain excluded. As a result, the final group of witnesses presented during trial may differ substantially from the names discussed months earlier during pretrial proceedings. That is one reason legal analysts avoid making definitive predictions about who will ultimately testify. At this stage, the most accurate picture comes from separating verified facts from assumptions. Public court records provide valuable insight into how the investigation has progressed, but they do not answer every question that fans continue asking online. Until additional hearings occur and more filings become available, many details remain unknown. What is clear is that federal prosecutors appear to be relying on multiple categories of evidence rather than any single witness alone. As this legal battle moves forward, each new court filing will likely offer another piece of the puzzle. Until then, the focus should remain on verified information, careful reporting, and the fundamental principle that Lil Durk is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. As the investigation continues to draw attention across the hip-hop world, another major topic has been the role of documentary evidence and how it compares to witness testimony. Many people assume that federal prosecutors build their entire case around individuals who decide to cooperate, but that is not always how these investigations work. In many modern federal prosecutions, documentary and digital evidence form the backbone of the government's case, while witnesses are called to explain, verify, or provide context for that evidence. This means that even if a witness becomes unavailable or changes their testimony, prosecutors may still rely on records, communications, surveillance, or forensic analysis that they believe independently supports their allegations. Understanding that balance helps explain why federal cases often take months or even years to prepare before reaching trial. One area that frequently creates confusion is the difference between a witness and an expert witness. A fact witness generally testifies about events they personally observed or participated in, while an expert witness explains technical subjects that may be difficult for a jury to understand. In a federal investigation involving electronic evidence, prosecutors may call digital forensic specialists to explain how phone data was recovered, how location records were analyzed, or how electronic communications were authenticated. These experts are not there to decide guilt or innocence. Instead, they help jurors understand the methods used to examine complex evidence so the jury can evaluate its reliability for themselves. Another category of witnesses that often receives less public attention includes law enforcement officers. Federal agents who participated in the investigation may testify about search warrants, interviews, evidence collection, surveillance operations, or the execution of investigative procedures. Their testimony can establish how evidence entered government custody and whether proper legal procedures were followed throughout the investigation. Defense attorneys, in turn, have the opportunity to question those investigators about the methods they used, potential inconsistencies in their reports, or decisions made during the investigation. That exchange is a routine part of federal trials and allows both sides to challenge the strength of the evidence before a jury reaches any conclusions. Throughout the discussion surrounding Lil Durk's case, one recurring misconception has been that sealed court filings automatically contain the identities of secret informants. While sealed filings can include sensitive information, they are not limited to witness identities. Courts may seal documents to protect ongoing investigative techniques, safeguard personal information, preserve the fairness of future proceedings, or prevent the disclosure of evidence that has not yet been introduced publicly. As a result, the existence of sealed filings should not be interpreted as confirmation that hidden witnesses or undisclosed cooperators are waiting to emerge. Until those documents are unsealed or referenced during court proceedings, their contents remain unknown to the public. Another reason federal prosecutors exercise caution is because witness safety can become an important concern in high-profile criminal cases. When a case attracts national media coverage and intense public attention, courts may approve protective measures that limit unnecessary disclosure of certain identifying information before trial. These protections are designed to preserve the integrity of the judicial process rather than to suggest guilt or innocence. Similar safeguards have been used in many federal prosecutions involving organized crime, public corruption, financial fraud, and other complex investigations. They reflect standard legal practice rather than anything unique to this particular case. Defense attorneys also play a significant role in evaluating every witness the government intends to present. During pretrial proceedings, the defense may challenge whether testimony is relevant, reliable, or legally admissible. Attorneys can file motions seeking to exclude evidence they believe was improperly obtained or testimony they argue would unfairly prejudice the jury. Judges then review those arguments and determine what evidence will ultimately be presented during trial. This process demonstrates that witness testimony does not automatically reach the jury simply because prosecutors want to introduce it. Every significant piece of evidence must satisfy legal standards established by the court. As interest in the case has grown, several online commentators have attempted to predict which individuals may eventually appear as government witnesses. While those predictions generate discussion among fans, they remain exactly that, predictions. Federal cases can change considerably between indictment and trial. Additional evidence may emerge, plea negotiations may occur, motions may alter the scope of admissible testimony, and prosecutors may adjust their trial strategy based on developments in the case. Because of these variables, even experienced legal analysts avoid making definitive statements about future witness lists unless supported by official court filings or announcements made during legal proceedings. For now, the public record shows that the case continues to move through the federal court system, with each filing providing only a portion of the overall picture. Questions about alleged informants, cooperating witnesses, and confidential sources will likely remain the subject of ongoing debate until more information becomes available through official proceedings. Until then, separating documented facts from online speculation remains the most responsible approach for anyone following this story. Court records, judicial rulings, and verified legal filings carry far greater weight than anonymous internet claims, and they will continue to shape the public's understanding as the legal process unfolds. Like every criminal defendant appearing before a federal court, Lil Durk remains presumed innocent unless and until the government proves its case beyond a reasonable doubt. That brings us to the end of today's deep dive into the publicly known witnesses, alleged informants, and key individuals connected to Lil Durk's ongoing federal legal case. As always, our goal is to separate verified court information from internet speculation and keep you informed with facts instead of rumors. This case is still developing, which means new filings, hearings, and official updates could change the picture over time. We'll continue following every major courtroom development and breaking down the legal documents in a way that's easy to understand. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think about everything discussed in today's report? Do you believe the prosecution has already revealed its strongest evidence, or do you think there are still major developments waiting to come out in future court proceedings? Share your thoughts in the comments below, but remember to keep the discussion respectful and focused on verified information rather than unconfirmed rumors. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more in-depth rap news, legal updates, and hip-hop analysis, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Turning on notifications will ensure you never miss our latest coverage whenever major news breaks. We cover everything from courtroom updates and industry headlines to album releases, artist interviews, and the biggest stories shaping the culture. Thanks for watching and supporting the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing detailed, fact-based coverage of the biggest stories in hip-hop. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll be back soon with another rap news update. Until next time, take care and thanks for watching.